Do you want to learn how to read tarot cards? Stay tuned for 5 steps that I recommend to help you learn tarot. Hi everybody, I'm Sue Ellen Clayton. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. This video was requested by someone on this channel, and I am happy to share my suggestions for learning tarot. Notice I said suggestions. I don't believe that there are any one-size-fits-all rules to learning tarot, and the tarot police won't come knocking on your door if you don't do it my way. We all have different goals, learning styles, time availability, and resources. Some of these suggestions will likely work for you, and some might not. So feel free to pick and choose from this video, try different things, and figure out what works for you. Here are the 5 steps I recommend for learning tarot. Step number 1, learn the meanings of the cards. Step number 2, learn to trust your intuition. Step number 3, record your progress. Step number 4, make practice a priority. And step number 5, have a strategy for improving. So let's look at each step in more detail. The first step is to learn the meanings of the cards. For me, it was important to learn the meanings of the cards before doing anything else. I will say that there are many people who go straight to reading tarot intuitively, and I've linked to a video below about how to do this. My best friend who got me into tarot reads intuitively, and I don't believe she's ever studied the traditional meanings. However, I would guess that if you've subscribed to my channel, you're more like me and want a foundation in the card meanings. One recommendation I have is to start with some form of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I know there are a lot of criticisms of this deck. It is more than 100 years old, so it is hard for us to relate to the images of people in funny costumes. The characters are all white and the gender rules are very traditional. Plus, it's heavily influenced by European culture and has a lot of Christian symbols. I totally understand, and these are valid criticisms that you may or may not be able to get past, and I respect that. The reason I recommend the Rider-Waite-Smith decks are that there are so many more resources available in terms of books and other study materials. They also have a lot of images of people, which to me makes them easier to interpret. So I'd recommend starting with the Rider-Waite-Smith deck if possible, and then branch out once you've learned the meanings of the cards. I do have a video about how to choose a tarot deck, and I'll link below. Let's talk about reasons to learn the meanings of the cards. As I get more comfortable reading tarot, I find that I'm also more comfortable relying on my intuition. However, there are times when I get nothing intuitively, and that is very frustrating and potentially embarrassing if I was doing a live reading. I am also a person who tends to get very nervous, and my intuition doesn't like showing up when I am nervous. So I really like knowing that I'm well versed in the meaning of the cards and will have something to say even if my intuition is not kicking in. I'd compare it to being like a surgeon. You really need to know how to remove a gallbladder. If something goes sideways in the surgery and you have to improvise, you don't have to consult a checklist about the 6 steps in gallbladder surgery. You want to have the meanings down pat so you can start making adjustments from foundational knowledge rather than trying to figure out if you're removing the stomach or the liver by mistake. When I get nothing intuitively, I go back to the meanings of the cards. You can give an awesome reading just from knowing the traditional meanings. And the knowledge that I know the traditional meanings alone takes my nerves down a few notches. So how do you learn the meanings of the cards? I'm assuming that most of you already know your learning style and how you learn best. The 4 main types of learning styles are visual learners, auditory learners, read-write learners, and kinesthetic learners, and I'll talk about each of these individually. I am an auditory learner. I learn best from listening. One great option that I've used myself and recommend for other auditory learners is audiobooks, and there is a huge selection of tarot books on audible.com. There are great resources on YouTube, including this channel. Other great options are podcasts, seminars, and courses. Find people you like and consume as much of their content as you can. If you're a visual learner, you prefer to learn from visual presentations that include diagrams, images, pictures, animations, and videos. You probably don't get much benefit from a book or a podcast, but you're all in for a video. You might like to take notes using sketchnoting, also known as visual note-taking, and you can see an example on the screen. This was developed in 2006 by Michael Rohde, who found traditional note-taking stressful because he could not capture every detail, so he combined traditional note-taking with doodling. I've attached a link to a Wikipedia article if you'd like to learn more. If you go to Amazon and do a search for tarot coloring books, you'll find many great options if you're a visual learner. I own the Tarot Coloring Book by Teresa Reed and Mary Greer, but I'll confess that I've never used it because that's not the way I learn. But I'll give you a peek inside so you can determine if it would be helpful for you. Let's look at the Nine of Wands. On the left, we see a title, the element, and a short description of what the card means. In this case, the Nine of Wands can indicate a setback before reaching a goal. Then there's a short description of the card in the upright and reversed position, followed by some information on the symbols and colors. At the end is a question, in this case, which colors say wariness to you? You might want to take notes in a way that works for you. Rather than using sentences to create their notes, visual learners often like to use mind maps to organize information in bubbles so they can see the relationships between ideas or topics. Visual learners might also prefer to sketch, draw, or paint the tarot cards or individual elements. I've seen visual spatial people create these beautiful tarot journals that have little sketches and calligraphy and different colored ink. They are works of art, and you might find that process enjoyable and very helpful. I'll talk more about tarot journals in a few minutes. As a visual learner, you may also benefit from staring at the cards and meditating around them. Focus on the card. What do you notice? What does it make you think of? Drink in the images and enjoy. There are also read-write learners who prefer to read and write down the information. I fall into this category as well. We are lucky because there are probably thousands of tarot books at this point. If you're overwhelmed by choices, you might want to start with the little white book that comes with your deck of cards. Normally, these are very tiny. You can see one on the screen. It has a few keywords and maybe a one-paragraph explanation of the cards. This is a very manageable way to get started writing about the cards. If you learn by reading and writing, there are a lot of excellent tarot books. Choose one and study it like a textbook. Figure out a way to keep your notes organized. If you like writing by hand, you can set up a notebook with a page or two for each card. You can also take notes on a computer. And I'll talk a little bit more about the difference between writing in longhand and typing in a moment. The final type of learner is a kinesthetic learner. These are people who learn by doing hands-on activities. In this case, you will want to really connect with your cards. You can do a lot of sorting, grouping, and rearranging your cards into categories. Separate the major and minor arcana cards. Separate the cards by suit. Separate the cards by number or rank. Find all the cards that have horses on them. Find all the cards where people are standing on a stage. Find all the cards that have ships in the background. You get the idea. Something else a kinesthetic learner can do is to actually feel yourself stepping into the card and looking around at the environment inside. What can you see, hear, feel, touch, or smell? What are you doing? What does that action feel like in your body? Let's use the Five of Pentacles as an example. You can see a stained glass window illuminated in the church. The area around you is silent except for the crunching of your feet in the snow and the sound of the organ inside the church. You can feel pain in your feet because you're walking through cold snow. You can actually taste the snowflakes on your tongue. You can smell wood being burned. If there are people on the card, try to embody them. How would it feel to be powerful like the Emperor? Or motionless like the man in the Four of Swords? Or dancing like the women in the Three of Cups? If you pull two cards with people, consider how they would talk to each other. Put on a little play about what the Queen of Cups would say to the Fool and how he would respond to her. Another thing you can do is teach about the card. That is why I started this channel, because I know I learn better by teaching. If you are fearful of doing real teaching, or you can't find anyone willing to learn from you, you can always set up a whiteboard in your living room and try to teach tarot to your pet. I promise you that your dog is not going to protest, especially if treats are a part of your lecture. Kinesthetic learners can also create something to represent each card. For example, I am a quilter. I could use fabric scraps to create some kind of a collage that represents each card. So that's it for step number 1, learning the cards. Choose whatever methods work for you and your learning style. Let's move on to step number 2, which is to trust your intuition. As I mentioned earlier, I did a whole video about how to read cards intuitively that I'll link to below. In that video, I talk about the different kinds of intuition and how each one relates to tarot. I also share 15 things to look for in a card that can help you read intuitively, including weather, time of day, colors, and symbolism. I also recommend that you pay attention to people's posture and position, to the direction they are facing, and to what you notice first in the card. Here's an example of trusting my intuition. I recently did a reading called Toxic Intentions that I will link to below. It is reading number 15. Alexis wanted to know what her boyfriend's intentions were towards her. She drew 5 cards, and the last 3 were Death, the Tower, and the Devil. It was pretty obvious to me that the boyfriend did not want good things for Alexis. However, when I looked at the second card, which was the 4 of Cups, I concluded that the 3 cups on the ground each represented a fantasy of how the boyfriend wanted to harm Alexis. The first card represented death, the second the Tower, and the third card represented the Devil. I don't believe that you will find this interpretation in any book, and it might appear pretty far-fetched, but it worked for me and I am sticking to it. That is the heart of an intuitive reading. Your interpretation might feel a little silly or even really stupid, but there is a part of you who will recognize that it also feels true to you. Intuition is like a muscle, and unfortunately, there is no way to get better at it except for practicing. It's like trying to prepare for running a triathlon by watching YouTube videos. It will only get you so far, and then you have to hit the pavement. As I said at the beginning of this video, I know people who only read intuitively and have never learned the traditional meanings of the cards. But I think that most of these people are very in touch with their psychic abilities and aren't actually reading the cards. They are just projecting what they already know onto the cards. I have had this happen in readings when I knew enough about the cards to know that what the readers were telling me had zero to do with the cards in front of me. It was basically just a way to get me to pay for the reading, and then they channeled their message. Since you're watching this video, I'm expecting that you are more like me. You probably have some intuitive ability, but you are also relying heavily on the cards to provide the message. Trusting your intuition requires that you make a decision to trust yourself and the cards. If you trust yourself, you will get better. You've made it this far in the video, and I wanted to stop and ask for a favor if you're not already a subscriber, and that is to please hit the subscribe button. It is free for you, and it will help me grow this channel. Plus, it means that you won't miss anything. Thanks so much, and if you're already a subscriber, I truly appreciate your ongoing support. Now let's get back to the video. Step number 3 is to record your progress. When I was going to the gym last year, I had a journal that showed each machine that I used, as well as the weight that I used and the number of repetitions I did. It was very helpful when I wanted to look back on my progress and also problem solve some things, like why I got hurt or why I was feeling burnt out. It takes a bit of effort, but recording your progress creates data that can be really helpful. I think the same thing is true with tarot readings. It is very helpful to have a reference that you can look back to. You can put whatever you want in a tarot journal. Mine are very simple and have the date, the cards, the spread if applicable, and my conclusion about the readings. If I'm making a video of my reading, I actually do my journaling while I'm writing the script, and I use Microsoft Word. I keep it really simple. I've seen other people who've added things to their tarot journal, such as the phase of the moon. It's completely up to you and what you consider to be important. As preparation for this video, I watched a few YouTube videos about how to create tarot journals and immediately felt like a colossal failure. They were beautiful. These YouTubers had invested in hardcover journals with high-quality paper. They used multiple pen colors, had calligraphy titles, and their handwriting was impressive. This is not what my tarot journal looks like. If I'm not typing, I use an 100-sheet notebook. I buy these at Walmart during back-to-school sales when they are 99 cents, and I prefer the college-ruled notebooks. I date them and draw a diagram with the cards in the spread. And then I write notes about my readings and thoughts. My notebooks are a mess. I was a professional writer for many decades and learned how to take notes when I was conducting interviews. I learned to write very quickly and use my version of shorthand. Most people wouldn't be able to decipher my penmanship. In addition to my messy writing, I also go back and cross things out and rewrite things. I have arrows going from one place to another. I only use one side of the notebook, so I will draw an arrow to the blank page on the other side if I have a lot to add. Picture the opposite of a beautiful tarot journal, and that's what I do. I'm not a visual learner, so the mess doesn't bother me. However, that doesn't mean that I'm super envious of people with gorgeous journals. But I know myself. What would happen if I misspelled a word and wrecked the entire journal? I would stop. And I'm so used to writing quickly and messily that even if I forced myself to improve my penmanship, it would soon devolve into messy writing. So I stick with my cheap notebooks. Let's talk about typing notes versus using handwriting. Tarot teachers will often recommend that you take notes by hand because you have more of a connection with what you're doing. And that is true. You tend to retain more information when you are writing versus when you are typing. This hypothesis was proven by research by Mueller and Oppenheimer from 2014 that showed students who took notes on laptops performed worse on conceptual questions than students who took notes longhand. The authors concluded that this is because on a laptop, students tend to transcribe lectures verbatim rather than actually processing the information. I have linked to this study below if you want more information. Personally, I know that writing longhand really does help me retain information. However, I also think that it is perfectly okay to type your tarot journal, and I think this decision comes down to personal choice. We are all adults here, and tarot is likely a hobby. We're not trying to get good grades or get into our first choice of a college. So we don't have to take notes longhand unless we want to. In fact, you may have many reasons for preferring to use a computer. I am writing this script wearing compression gloves on my hands. I have arthritis in my thumbs and overdid it cleaning because using the trigger on a squirt bottle hurts my hands. At the moment, writing is not comfortable, and even as someone who likes writing longhand, I am glad that I have typing available as an alternative. You might have different issues. Typing on a laptop is usually faster. It is more legible and easy to edit. You can use spell check and grammar checking tools. It can be more private as you don't have to worry about your roommates reading your notebook. It's also easier to find a document in the cloud than going through 20 years worth of notebooks looking for notes on a book you read 5 years ago. So I'd advise that you record your progress in a way that will help you become a better tarot reader. If you want to create a work of art that is a tarot journal, go for it. If you are okay with messy notebooks or typing your notes, do that. We are all adults here. Do what works for you. Let's move on to step number 4. Make practice a priority. Practicing reading tarot might be the part that you either are most excited about or most scared of. Personally, I found it to be scary, but I'm also somebody who doesn't really enjoy being a novice at anything. I remember learning to skate as a kid. It was not fun. I kept falling. The ice was cold. It was hard to get up. I'm very tall and I am not built like a skater. I'm also not very athletic, so all my friends were better skaters than I was. And I grew up in Canada, so everybody skated. Overall, it sucked. However, whether you are learning to skate or learning to read tarot cards, there really is only one path to improving, and that is to practice. And you have to continue to practice when things get hard, because that's when you really improve. One of the easiest ways to practice tarot is to ask a question about your life and pull cards to answer it. In the beginning, start with just one card, and then you can move up to 3 cards, and from there to more advanced spreads. Ask a question, look at the cards, recall their traditional meanings, and see what comes up for you intuitively. Record your thoughts, feelings, and impressions in your tarot journal. Then, if you need to, look up the traditional meanings. Now, I say that reading for yourself is the easiest way to practice, and in many ways it is. You can take your time, there's nobody judging you if you forget a meaning or need to look it up, and you will know if your answers feel correct. This is totally how I started. But there are also many disadvantages for reading for yourself, and that is because it's easy to project your biases onto the cards and use the cards to confirm what you already feel. In addition, your emotions can cloud your judgment, and it is also difficult to get a new perspective when you are too close to the situation. Here's an example. You have a fight with your neighbor and pull the Devil card. It's immediately obvious to you that your neighbor is Satan, who has been sent from the underworld to torture you. But is it possible that it could mean something else, such as there's a power struggle and you are both feeling very trapped or manipulated by the situation? Or that what you perceive as being manipulated is actually something that you do as well, but don't want to admit. That you are both obsessed with each other and the neighborhood war has taken on a life of its own that you could both step away from. When reading for yourself, you may not have enough perspective to have this kind of insight. There are also many books that contain tarot questions that can help you get started if you want to do readings for yourself. One of these is 2000 Tarot Practice Questions, Improve Your Tarot Reading Skills, 2nd edition by Elizabeth Smith. Here you can see pages 120 and 121. Some of the questions are, what is the biggest obstacle in my life right now? What was the basis of my parents' beliefs about money and how did it affect me? Is this person fully aligned with my energy, desires, and dreams for the future? And is there anything about my health that I'm ignoring? These are great starting questions if you want some ideas for readings for yourself. Another way to practice is to read for family and friends in exchange for honest feedback. I have done this a lot. I made it clear that I was new and doing this reading for practice, so I tried to set expectations really low. Since they weren't paying me, it took a lot of pressure off me to come up with some life-changing reading. It also taught me a lot about working with querents. As I mentioned earlier, I tend to get really nervous, so this is the process I used. I would talk to them about their questions and draw the cards. I would tell them that sometimes it takes me a while to formulate an answer, but I would get back to them as soon as I completed the reading. Then I'd go away and prepare the reading. I always took as much time as I needed. Sometimes I could figure out the answer right away, and sometimes it took a few days. Then, because I like to write, I type my conclusions into a document and share them, along with a photo of the cards. That gave me a way to organize my thoughts and also allowed them to review my conclusions and share whether or not they thought the reading was accurate. At this point, I haven't come across anybody who said that the reading was useless and I was a terrible tarot reader. Quite the opposite, in fact. My readings have been very accurate and exceedingly helpful. I'd say that 1 or 2 have actually been life-changing. There are many online communities where you can request and exchange readings, so you might want to check those out. I have not done this and would advise caution about who you connect with, but this format seems to be quite popular. There are also groups on social media such as Facebook where people post their questions and the cards they pulled. You can look at these posts and figure out how you would read the cards. I often use these anonymous posts to create videos for this channel, although I do change a few details. Generally, lots of people chime in with opinions. I'd say that 90% of the time the opinions are contradictory, so you'd be able to consider yourself right or wrong depending on who you believed. If I'm preparing a reading for this channel, I do not read the comments because I don't want them to sway me. Since you're already a fan of this channel, you can use my readings to practice. Every reading begins with the background situation and the cards the querent picked. Stop there and don't look at my interpretation. Come up with your own. Then you can see whether or not your interpretation aligns with mine or not. I am not claiming to be an expert, and your interpretation may be a lot better than mine or just different. I know there are lots of other ways to practice, but I wanted to stick with the ones that I've used. Figure out something that works for you. Now we have reached the final step, step 5, which is to have a strategy for improving. I believe that it is helpful to figure out how you can improve your tarot skills, assuming that is your goal. It is ideal if you can take actions every day or at least every week. One thing that has helped me is to study each card very deeply. I am currently studying 3 cards each month and am journaling about them every day. I chose these cards deliberately, but you could also choose them randomly. This idea came to me from when I was homeschooling my kids. Somewhere I learned about an art project where you drew an apple every day for 30 days. It starts out very healthy, and by the end of the 30 days, it was actually a lot less rotten than I would have predicted. The point was that by concentrating on a specific subject for 30 days, you notice things that you wouldn't normally notice. I'm finding this in my month-long study of the cards. I start off with the surface stuff, but every day I see something different. It has been an amazing exercise. Some days I don't have a lot of thoughts, and when I persevere, these are the days when I seem to learn the most. Yes, it will take 2 years and 2 months to go all the way through the cards, and I'm okay with that. Another way to improve is to make time to practice. Maybe you can do it on your lunch hour at work. Rather than eating with your colleagues every day, go somewhere alone 2 days a week and pull cards for yourself. Or go to lunch with your colleagues and bring your cards with you so you can practice with your colleagues in exchange for honest feedback. If you're pulling cards for yourself, make time by doing it first thing in the morning or before you fall asleep at night. I would also work on developing and trusting your intuition. I tried to find a quote about this that I've heard and really liked, but I was unsuccessful. In essence, it compares intuition to being like a quiet flute coming after a brass band in a parade. What it means is that there are a lot of things that you have to silence before you can get to your intuition. Once again, this takes practice. It's also good if you can build your self-awareness about what kinds of biases you bring to your work. One of my teachers lived in a major metropolitan city and worked with a lot of queerants who were sex workers. They would ask if they should continue in that line of work or find something else. I don't think that most of us would put sex work at the top of our career list and might have strong opinions about people who do. I think that's a good example of having to check your personal bias and focus on what the cards are saying rather than your personal opinion. You might also have strong feelings about abortion or cosmetic surgery or women who give up their careers to stay at home with their children. The more you recognize these biases, the better tarot reader you will be. Continue to educate yourself by reading, listening to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, attending conferences, or being part of an in-person or online tarot community. So let's do a quick summary of the 5 steps to learning tarot, according to me. I hope I've made it clear that these are what's worked for me, and you have my permission to do what works for you. The first step is to learn the meanings of the cards. I recommended the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot deck if possible because it has the most resources available. We talked about how to learn the cards depending on what type of learner you are. The second step is to trust your intuition, no matter how stupid it seems to you. Intuition is like a muscle and you have to use it for it to grow. Step number 3 is to record your progress. We talked about how to create a tarot journal and the fact that it does not have to be handwritten with perfect penmanship in order to be effective. Messy writing or even typing will work too. In step 4, we talked about making practice a priority. You can do this by reading for yourself, reading for others in exchange for feedback, and looking at tarot questions and cards that have been posted on social media. Step number 5 is the final step, and that is to have a strategy for improving. I talked about my current project where I'm journaling about 3 cards for a month. We also talked about becoming aware of your biases, improving your intuition, and continuing to educate yourself. I hope that this video gave you some ideas on how you can learn tarot. Please leave a comment if you'd like to share what you've learned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.